I can't figure it out. I'm here actually making another video about Starbucks. Why Starbucks is still in the news cycle right now is beyond me. It's ridiculous. We had a simple case of two men being arrested in Starbucks for refusing to leave what is absolutely private property. Like, imagine having a party and asking your guests to leave your home, then having them refuse. When you call the police on them, you suddenly become the bad guy after they still refuse to leave and are finally being arrested. In that situation, would you apologize and begin to make accommodations for them to come back to your house whenever the hell they please? Or would you stand your ground and refuse an apology altogether? I know that seems like sort of an over-the-top comparison, but I used it because it must be stressed that Starbucks is private property. Private meaning they don't owe you anything.
You'll get nothing like it.
That includes them not owing you a place to hang out or have meetings. Hell, in a free country, they don't have to try and be fair. Several years ago, they had a problem with Trump supporters.
Many Donald Trump supporters are not happy with Starbucks, and they've started a hashtag Trump Cup movement. It follows an incident in Florida where a customer claimed he was denied service for backing Trump. Now other supporters are participating in the Trump Cup movement, in which they say the name Trump for their order, so the Starbucks staff has to write Trump on cups and say the name when the order is ready.
Trump supporters organized a silly little campaign that didn't boycott, but actually could only be pulled off by buying a cup of coffee. Still, when you consider that liberals love Starbucks and that the Starbucks CEO went out of his way to apologize as quickly as possible, made a point of meeting the two men in person, and is basically bending over backwards to right what many people think was a wrong, you would think the shenanigans would have stopped by now and the media would have forgotten the incident. Wrong. Liberals won't let an apology stop their fun-filled protest against what is likely not racism. They won't stop to think about the fact that perhaps Starbucks isn't racist. That perhaps the one barista was simply following a policy, or that even if the barista was discriminating or wrong, that is not an indication that the entire Starbucks workforce has the same issue that the one barista did. There are many things that protesters and media should probably consider about this incident. But first, they should absolutely consider culture. This Starbucks incident is all over the media, and we're forced to stomach the Starbucks CEO virtue signaling to the tune of an afternoon 8,000 plus store shutdown of operations for racial sensitivity training.
The first step that we are taking is on May 29th, in the afternoon, we are closing all 8,000 plus Starbucks company operated stores in the United States for mandatory training around unconscious bias, conscious inclusion, and working to not only educate but sensitize every Starbucks partner to this issue.
And all this while also being forced to watch the Philadelphia police commissioner give what looked to be a painful-looking apology for the words he used while supporting his officers successfully following protocol.
I can appreciate, in light of the Starbucks policy and how well known it is to many, why these two men were appalled when they were asked to leave. For this reason, I apologize to them.
Yeah, I bet he isn't feeling pressure from someone a notch or two above his pay grade. You see, these days, many liberals aren't afraid to throw a good temper tantrum to get what they want. We see this when we see them destroying their own companies and going after their own in order to bully everyone into seeing things the way they think they should be seen. If not seen through a liberal fantasy lens, it's to be destroyed, fired, to have its livelihood taken away, to be denied access, banned, boycotted, called racist, sexist, homophobic, and never tolerated. Reasonable arguments are racist when whites make them, self-hating when blacks make them, and just plain ignored when anyone else does. A reasonable argument like why we haven't heard much from the barista Has anyone considered that? Has anyone considered that this person didn't actually get fired from her Starbucks job? They instead agreed to her stepping down. So obviously, Starbucks doesn't think she was actually a racist, or they would have fired her outright. Unless you honestly believe that Starbucks would keep known racists on the payroll. As a matter of fact, it's being reported that the barista was a huge social justice warrior, like you might expect from many Starbucks employees. After all, Starbucks is a place where the SJW types like to hang out. This should be a no-brainer. The Starbucks crowd are usually very progressive, forward-thinking people who would likely stand up for black people like the whites in Starbucks actually did that day. Would these same people stand up if the person who was denied a trip to the restroom happened to be a uniformed officer? Well, that actually happened in Philly a couple of years ago.
And now this story, no coffee, no restroom. An employee at a Philadelphia Starbucks is accused of denying a police sergeant access to the restaurant's bathroom.
That's right. It's a story that went viral after a social media post. The sergeant wrote, "As I walked out with my hand up and while she continued loudly to tell me about the bathroom down the street, I was even more astonished that the many customers and other employees said nothing and seemed indifferent."
How many of you remember the protests and yelling? That's right, there wasn't any. Did the police officer refuse to leave or demand to go to the restroom? Nope, he just left. But for some reason in the story of these two black men, the media aren't paying much attention to the barista and are putting all of the blame on the police and Starbucks, a company that must be racist if there's at least one employee who might be. This most certainly is a political move if we aren't focused in on that actual barista. Now, the bad news is that Starbucks caved easily. They dropped the charges because of the white guilt and the media backlash. They didn't even try to do much to protect their employee, who we have no evidence to prove is actually racist. A couple of sites, however, have tried to say that she had racist conversations about Spanish-speaking customers, but reading her tweets leaves you thinking that she enjoyed speaking Spanish and wanted to teach her friends how to speak it as well. Still, no true sign of racism there. Starbucks knows that they needed to get in front of this situation. They know all too well how a few angry liberals can get. They've been in the crosshairs of angry rioters for years. In Oakland during the Mike Brown riots.
Ran into Starbucks.
In D.C. for the inauguration time during anti-Trump riots. At UC Berkeley during the Milo riots.
Right now, they are destroying the windows of a Starbucks. Oh yeah, fuck Starbucks!
They've seen quite a few of their stores attacked, destroyed, and looted. It's a wonder they're doing something as silly as apologizing for a non-racist policy being enforced and forcing all 8,000 plus stores to undergo sensitivity training. Sensitivity training? This is a training that isn't even proven to work. In many cases, it has been shown to have a negative effect instead of a positive one. In fact, a Harvard Business Review article points to a Harvard study where they stated a study of 829 companies over 31 years showed that diversity training had no positive effects in the average workplace. Millions of dollars a year were spent on the training, resulting in, well, nothing. Attitudes and the diversity of the organizations remain the same. The article went on to say that companies do these things to avoid lawsuits. Whether they work in terms of changing the work culture doesn't matter. It's the appearance and the intentions that matter.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Just this week, a black man who calls himself Hotep Jesus went into a Starbucks and demanded his reparations cup of coffee. The barista there was over the top accommodating. She gave him exactly what he asked for.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right, I heard y'all was racist, so I came to get my free coffee.
I saw that.
Yeah, I heard you guys don't like black people, so I wanted to get my Starbucks reparations voucher. What's that?
Is that a real thing?
It's a real thing.
I mean, I'll give it to you. I saw that on my Twitter last night. I was like,
Yeah, I need a free coffee. That's what I'm talking about.
White guilt strikes again. But getting free cups of coffee isn't all we're seeing. A recent interview with the two guys that got arrested reveals that they didn't plan to buy anything. They only planned to meet, and that was it.
She then comes from around the register, walks up to us, asks if, she can help us with anything. Can we start with some drinks or water or something like that? For when we have bottles of water with us, so, we're fine. We're just waiting for a meeting. We'll be out really quick type thing.
The entitled gentleman expected Starbucks to provide them with a free meeting place. The question we should ask is this: are these moves that people are making going to help or hurt blacks in the long run? When a company will do whatever a group wants out of fear of a boycott or fear of being labeled a racist company, is that ultimately good for us? Think about it. If all our power in the U.S. comes from us complaining, doesn't this just encourage more complaining? In an era where people are getting more spoiled and entitled, won't these things only amplify those actions? If companies are willing to bend over backwards for us to prove that they aren't racist, if we are getting jobs, free coffee, preferential treatment and education, and a leg up to help a company meet a diversity quota, how can we expect to truly be independent and competitive? How can we truly be respected for who we are as individuals? Why are we advocating for being seen for the color of our skin instead of for the content of our characters? And if some of us are poor of character, why is it so taboo to speak about it and to call that behavior out? And is Starbucks setting a new precedent? Will other companies follow suit? Blacks in high places like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton have been shaking companies down with the threat of labeling them racist for years. Companies pay lawsuits in order to get the black leaders to call off the dogs. But how is it helping us? It's certainly helping Democrats look like saviors to the poor, unfortunate, and childlike black folks who need them to change laws and threaten people in order for us to get a few new favors and goodies. And while they change black liberal diapers and find new ways to spoil black brats, I'll be here trying to convince you all that, instead of all that, we need to consider culture. I'm Chi Brown. Remember to share this, like this, comment, and subscribe. I'm out.
No more Yaza Baza.